We the lazy declare that we will recline when we feel inclined. And yes, we feel inclined.
We answered our kids' questions all day. It's our time to prioritize, no priorities.
Why?
Because
we put in back-to-back doubles. So now we'll be putting in extra OT right here.
We've checked off our to-do list.
Now we're checking off our to-don't list.
we the lazy are taking back lazy.
By getting comfy on our Lazy Boy furniture.
Lazy Boy. Long live the lazy.
When storms start to blow and danger strikes, we come together to face any challenge as a community. And when trouble hits our county, HCFL Alert is your #1 source for information. HCFL Alert is with you before, during, and after the storm. To sign up, visit hcfl.gov/HCFL Alert so we know how and when to notify you about local emergencies. The safest way through bad weather is together.
How you doing, everybody? I'm Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips. Heat, still the hot topic of weather conversation, right?
Streaming from the ABC Action Weather Center in Studio A, this is Dennis Phillips Live, brought to you by Lazy Boy Furniture Galleries. Long live the lazy, and by HCFL Alert.
How you doing, everybody? It is a Tuesday night edition of Dennis Phillips Live. We are going to break our format, and we're going to jump right in. Now, Jason, I'm looking over, can you hear me through the phone, or you can hear me through the Zoom? Hold on, stand by. You can hear me which way? Okay, I don't know why you can't hear me through the Zoom, but hopefully I'll be able to hear Jason. So in case you guys did not notice, and I'm going to go ahead and let's just bring Jason on here right now. Jason Adams, our meteorologist on the weekend. There you are, Jason. Let me see if I can hear you. You know what? Maybe I'm not hearing you right. Maybe there's something going on with the audio from Zoom. Hold on, let me try it now. No. Ah, man. See, we literally set this up like 2 minutes ago. And he is in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I should absolutely be able to hear you, and I can't. And I'm sure it's probably something to do with the way we have this set up. I just want to try this. Hold on. Let me end this. Well, no, I don't want to mess it up. You know what? He needs to get to bed anyway. It's kind of tragic, though, because I really, really wanted to talk to Jason. What about it now? Go ahead and talk now. No. Is your mic, is your Zoom on mute? Okay, well, I hear him through his phone. Hey, let's try this. How about talking now?
Can you hear me now, everybody?
Okay, this is going to work. As crazy as it is, this is going to work. My phone through the microphone. Okay.
Genius, right here, these two.
I can't hear you. Okay, all right. So here we go. So here's what we want to talk about. Jason, why don't you explain what happened today? Because he had a day probably unlike anybody ever has in the history of the world. So go ahead and tell us where you are, why you're there, and what happened today.
So you called me yesterday. I was on PTO, and you were like, hey, what are you doing? You want to go to Louisiana to help our team over there at our skirt station here in Lafayette? And I was like, sure, why not? So scheduled a flight. Less than 12 hours later, I was on the plane this morning, had no issues getting to Atlanta. And then as we're leaving Atlanta, or we were attempting to leave Atlanta, the normal stop and go on the runway. So you stop, you go, you stop, you go. And then he pulled off to the side. The pilot pulled off to the side. And the flight attendants just finished their safety thing, their safety protocols that they do. And they sat down. I put in my ear pods. One of my favorite bands is Ice Nine Kills. They're a metal band. Blasted them. And over the blasting sound of a metal band, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the whole plane just like bam, like a car collision, and you hear people started screaming. You hear metal sounds like scraping against each other, and it was so jolting that if I didn't have my seatbelt on, I would have popped up out of my seat. And I swear, I did a left turn, then I did a right turn, and then the plane actually plopped down, so we were tilted at some point. And after the screaming stopped, and we all realized, okay, what happened? What the hell happened? We're all sitting here like completely confused. We all started putting two and two together that, I think we just got hit by another plane. And I'm a dork. I'm an aviation nerd, as watched this show on the Smithsonian Channel called Air Disasters, and it talks about all the plane crashes that have been in the past, and they break it down. They investigated how exactly it happened. It's a whole hour, and I'm a nerd, and I'm an aviation guy, so I immediately went to that show and all the survival things that it told me, and I was like, oh my gosh, we got hit by a plane. That means there could be a fire. So I immediately turned to look at the back of the plane to see if there was smoke or fire or anything like that, and thank goodness nothing was there. So we all took about a 30, 45-second pause, and we're all starting to realize, okay, we're safe, we're fine, nothing else is happening. And then about 7 or 8 minutes later, I logged onto Twitter, and I just happened to search, or an X, I searched Atlanta plane crash, and a picture popped up of our plane that somebody had taken from the gate, and our tail of the plane was completely off to the side and hanging down on the ground, and it was a smaller jet coming from Atlanta to Lafayette. So it's one of those jets that has the engine, the third engine. You have 2 on the wing, and then you have a third on the tail. All of that was gone. It literally decapitated the tail with the engine on our plane, and it's just hanging off to the side. So fast forward about 15, 20 minutes later, the pilot comes on and says Delta's trying to figure out if we should tow the plane back to the gate or if we need to evacuate the plane and get everybody on a bus. And then when I started seeing the pictures, I was like, well, how are you going to tow the plane when you've got your tail completely hanging off on the ground? So fast forward about another 30 to 45 minutes, and they finally evacuated us off the plane, got us on a bus, took us to the Delta Lounge, and then got us out of Atlanta about 2 hours later.
Oh, you get a free drink out of the deal?
They sent us a free voucher for a $12 meal. And we all died laughing at this because the cheapest airport meal in Atlanta you're going to get is $25. So we literally were cracking up at this. But I'm sure down the road something is going to head our way. I mean, I can't imagine it wouldn't. But right now we just wanted to get here and not just me. We had our assistant news director from ABC Action News. He was on the plane with me. And then half of the plane was actually Scripps journalists, our parent company's journalists. We had Cincinnati, we had Kansas City, we had West Palm Beach, and we had Tampa that were on the plane all coming here to Lafayette to prep our station here for the hurricane. And literally half the plane was journalists, and none of us could do anything about telling the story like we're supposed to be doing because we were all stuck on the plane.
I got a question. Is there any way that somebody could have done a Facebook Live from inside as it happened?
Maybe not as it happened, but shortly after, because it literally, Dennis, it was 15, 25 seconds max of the plane just in complete chaos as the top, the tail, and the engine was getting sheared off, and then it was done. And thankfully, I guess what worked in our favor, not for Delta, is that the tail did come off, because I imagine that the plane that hit us was going to Tokyo, and I think it was a 200-passenger plus plane, so it was much bigger than the little tiny jet that we had coming. There was maybe 30 people on our plane. So I think if it didn't decapitate the tail, it probably could have drug us down the runway a little bit, because you certainly felt the plane being pushed as well during all that chaos. And then finally, like I said, I think when it decapitated the tail, that's when we plopped back down, and we weren't getting drugged, tilted drug anymore. And then it was just silence. Well, after, of course, all the screaming stuff.
People were screaming and stuff?
Yeah, it literally was like a movie, buddy. I'd never been in a situation like that before, and it was literally like you see in movies, where you hear metal scraping, loud bangs, people screaming. And again, I had my earbuds on playing my metal music, and I heard all of this over my metal band. Crazy.
Well, and they might not have heard the beginning of this. Like yesterday, you were on PTO last weekend. Your sister came down. Is that what it was?
Yeah, my sister and her husband came down for the Bucs Commanders game.
So you guys were at the football game, and yep. So my boss says, corporate wanted you to go and track and help out the folks in Lafayette when Francine's coming. So I'm picking up the phone like, oh man, he's on PTO. I don't know how happy he's going to be to get this phone call. So the last 24 hours. The thing is, you will have a story to tell for the rest of your life now.
Yeah, and I met with the chief meteorologist here, Rob. He's great. He absolutely loves you, by the way. He says he definitely needs to connect with you more because he's a 30-year veteran here in this market, the way that you are in Tampa.
Oh, wow.
But when I was talking to him at the station today before I came and got to the hotel, he was like, the story for this trip is not you coming to cover a hurricane. It is literally going to be that you were in a plane crash and you survived. And thankfully everybody survived. He was like, so the story about the hurricane stuff is second to you being involved in this incident with the plane.
Absolutely crazy. Well, I know you got to get to bed because you're going to be up at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You got to be in a cover. Tell everybody what's going on in Lafayette and what the expectations are there from Francine.
So all of our Tampa viewers, all of our West Central Florida viewers are 100% aware of what happened from yesterday to today. The forecast showed Lafayette was in the center of the forecast cone as a Category 2. That would be pretty strong storm. I mean, we're talking about 100+ mile per hour winds. But today the track has shifted about 50 miles to the east, and that puts Lafayette on the weaker side of it. We'll still get tropical storm force winds, but that reduces, obviously, the surge potential on this part of the coast. We're about 25 miles inland here in Lafayette, so there's no surge worries here. But at the coast, that shifts it more to the east. The wind potential also shifting east, so this puts more of New Orleans metro, especially West New Orleans, the Metairie area west over to Baton Rouge in play versus us being here in Lafayette. Still, it just depends. I mean, you talk about it all the time, Dennis, the windshield wiper effect left and right. But when you're about 24 hours out, you don't really see a lot of that left-right movement. And the models have consistently, from this morning to this afternoon, continued to shift it to the east of Lafayette. So I think we're going to deal with tropical storm force conditions through the city. The eastern viewing area here that butts up against the Baton Rouge market, they're going to get hurricane force gusts easily. But again, more in play now for potentially New Orleans and the Baton Rouge area to get more of the stronger winds than what we'll have here in Lafayette.
And it is a hurricane now. I'm looking on the chat, and some of the folks are saying that it's just been upgraded to Cat 1 hurricane.
Yep,
So I'm guessing.
mile per hour winds.
Yeah. So my son's in New Orleans, and we were talking about his big question was, does he need to take down his 12-foot skeleton that he has up for Halloween decorations? I'm like, yeah, you probably should take it down. I don't think New Orleans is going to be all that bad. I mean, they're probably going to get 40, 50, I would think. But that's enough to make a giant skeleton fly away. So, there's that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I can't remember the exact name of the storm. I want to say it was Zeta or something like that hit them a couple of years ago, where the center went right over New Orleans. And right now, that doesn't look to be what's happening with this one. Of course, we always have to watch for those wobbles. But right now, at least, like you said, I think New Orleans is on the better part of the forecast.
Probably 45 to 55, maybe gusts up to 60. So, well, Jason, I will let you hit the sack. I know you got a long day ahead tomorrow. Thank you so much for sharing the story. So many people were saying, hey, get Jason on DPL tonight. We got to find out about the plane.
Yeah, and thank you, everyone. I was doing what reporters and anchors and journalists do. And that was after the shock wore off. I started immediately posting on social media, and it blew up, of course. And I've had people reach out from all over the U.S. that don't even follow me from Tampa. So everybody that sent their loves and well wishes, thank you. I was going through them all today. I couldn't respond to everybody because there's so much, but really appreciate the Tampa Bay community saying, we're glad you're okay, Jason, and I'll be back hopefully in a couple of days, and this will be a distant memory.
All right, dude, be safe. Have a good night.
All right, buddy.
All right, bye-bye. So there you go. I have no idea why the Zoom did not work, but we made lemonade out of lemons. So there you go. Let's go ahead and so thank you, by the way, for the update, letting me know that we now have a hurricane. That Francine is a hurricane. If you missed what Jason was talking about, this will replay, unless I delete it because of the silliness with me holding up the phone. But I'll probably leave it on anyway. So I have no idea why it did not work, the audio on his part, because the audio looked like it was on. Everything was good. I don't know why. But we made it work. All right, so let's talk about it because, a lot of folks, we have a lot of people who have family, friends, just love the city of New Orleans. And, it's obviously a concern. I mean, they go through this certainly a lot more than Tampa does. You get a northern Gulf Coast storm, and it's pretty common to have something go through. But let's go ahead and quickly give the latest. So I'm going to go ahead and just take that full. The one thing that we were talking about yesterday is, as you had this system developing and potentially getting stronger, we had all the ingredients out there. We had the water temperature above 80 degrees. We had the converging winds. The one thing that we've been talking about, we did have some dry air coming off of Mexico, and I showed you this yesterday, and that kind of kept this storm at bay for a while. But now that the center has pulled away from Mexico, there's abundant moisture. Obviously, it's in the Gulf of Mexico with really, really warm water. But the one thing that it's going to run into, not so much now, but before landfall, is shear. And what that means is air traveling in different directions at different heights. And when that happens, Typically, you'll see upper level winds blowing in the same direction is the ingredient that you're looking for something stronger. But when you don't have that, you have depending on how strong the shear is, you can see some pretty quick weakening of a tropical system. So when you look at what's out there, we have Francine, we have the other two areas out in the Atlantic. At this point, neither of those are posing a threat to the U.S. We're going to get into the long range stuff coming up in a couple of minutes. But right now, there is the latest, and as you see, updated. Hurricane Francine, winds of 75 miles an hour. Not sure if it was Recon that flew in that found that, or the NHC determined via the satellite. You know what? Let's go ahead and look. Let's go ahead and call up the update, and we can see together and see what that discussion shows. So, public advisory. Francine becomes a hurricane. Life-threatening storm surge and hurricane-force winds expected to begin on Wednesday in Louisiana. Let's see. You've got all the warnings, etc. And I do want, here you go. At 7 o'clock Central Time, the center of Francine was located where it was, moving northeast at 10 miles an hour. On this track, Francine anticipated to make landfall in Louisiana Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening. Now, here's the thing. 75-mile-an-hour winds, additional strengthening is expected through Wednesday morning. Francine is expected to weaken quickly after it moves inland. Here's the number I was looking for. Hurricane-force winds extend 30 miles out from the center. And that is very, very important, all right? Tropical storm-force winds extend 140 miles out to the center, okay? So let's talk about that, all right? As you look at Francine, it's now away from Mexico. That drier air is no longer being sucked in, and you have a system that potentially could be developing rather quickly over the next 12 to 18 hours. And then again, it runs into shear as we head into the overnight hours, or rather the afternoon hours tomorrow and into Wednesday. So I want to go ahead and show you, I keep showing this one. This is one I have a feeling that Noah and everybody else wants to forget. I'm going to call up a different graphic for you here. Let me look through this and find it. Here we go. So here is the wind radii. Okay, and this is really important. So we were talking about how far out hurricane-force winds extend, right? 30 miles out. Well, this is a really good representation of where the hurricane-force winds are in relationship to New Orleans and everywhere else, the Vermilion Bay. So as Jason said, Lafayette was pretty much right through the heart of the main wind band yesterday, but the track has nudged a little bit to the east. That'll put it on the west side, as he said, and the west side is the weaker side with less wind. This is not going to be known as a storm for its massive wind issue. It's a very rural part of Louisiana along the coast where it's coming in right here. And I'll be honest, a lot of these homes have already been hit by storms much stronger than what Francine is going to be. We always concern ourselves with the water and the surge. You know, even within the last couple of years, this part of Louisiana has had surge much, much higher than what we're anticipating with Francine. But look at the red color, okay? This is tomorrow afternoon around 3 o'clock. This is when landfall occurs. Look at where, once it goes inland, look how quickly the hurricane-force winds go away. See that? And look at where New Orleans is. So New Orleans will see tropical storm-force winds 40 to 50 miles an hour tomorrow afternoon. Baton Rouge, you're actually going to have probably closer to 60 to 65 mile an hour winds in Baton Rouge. And then, but look at what happens once it goes in. New Orleans is, the western part of New Orleans is right on the fringe of the lower end winds, maybe 58 to 60. So in my opinion right now, the more reasonable wind field for New Orleans would be about 50 to 55 in the west side of town, less on the east side. As this continues to move north, I do not believe New Orleans will get hurricane-force winds. Will they get gusts up to hurricane-force winds? Sure, that's a possibility. But I don't expect them to get much more than that. All right, and this is the updated wind field set from the Hurricane Center. So these are the numbers that it comes through. So let's go ahead and look at a lot of things, actually. We'll go ahead and start with surge. These are the updated surge numbers right here. These are updated every 6 hours along with the track. And as the track adjusts, the surge numbers adjust as well. So if you look at from west to east, you've got northeastern Texas around Galveston. You've got 1 to 3 foot surge. You have 2 to 4 foot surge closer to Lake Charles. Then you have from the Vermilion Bay right on through the bay, which gets it a lot, a 5 to 10 foot surge. This is a very rural part of Louisiana along the coast. Now you go inland, of course, there's people, but along the coast, it's a lot of swampland, it's a lot of marsh, and there's not a ton of development along the coast right in there. But then as you go east and you get closer to the Mississippi, and then you go Baton Rouge, then you have a surge that begins to increase 4 to 7 feet, or decrease rather, 4 to 7 feet, and then around the New Orleans area back toward Lake Pontchartrain. This is up from yesterday, from that eastern track. Yesterday, the surge prediction was 2 to 4 feet. Today, the surge prediction is 3 to 5 feet. Mobile Bay, 2 to 4 feet. And even to the Panhandle, even to Florida, with Santa Rosa and Okaloosa County, you could see a couple of feet of water rise, especially at high tide. So that is a look at your surge forecast. Let's go ahead and look at the spaghetti models. Again, tons of consensus here with all the spaghetti models. Yes, it did shift a little bit to the east, but when you've got a track this solid, you're not going to expect much of a change at all. First of all, it's only 18 hours out, so let's be honest. You're just not going to have much of a change. I mean, might it be a 15-mile change to the right? Sure. Might that put New Orleans into a little bit more wind? Maybe. But trust me, they have had it way worse than this in New Orleans. The farther west you are, Baton Rouge, going to be a little bit more in line with some of the stronger winds. And again, the water along the Mississippi. I used to live in Baton Rouge. I lived in Baton Rouge when I was in college. Didn't go to LSU, though. So let's go ahead and look at the Euro, and the Euro, where it's showing for landfall. You can see it right there, 978 millibars. So it's definitely gaining some strength right now. The current pressure, I think, was 994, something like that, 992. I have to look at the numbers. So it's expected some decent development over the next 12 hours to 18 hours before it starts running into the shear. The good thing is its forward speed is going to be picking up, and that's actually partially due to that shear that we're talking about. It's a pretty strong southwesterly flow. So what happens is as we start to see this area accelerate, it's going to have less time to drop as much rain over it, right? The slower it goes, the more rain. The faster it goes, the less rain. Not to mention, when it starts to accelerate further, you normally see weakening. However, if the storm starts picking up its forward speed, then you have something known as relative velocity, and the winds down to the surface may still be a little bit faster than the actual base wind speeds that you're talking about. So overall, this will be in and out pretty quickly, as you can see, through Mississippi, and then kind of into northern Alabama as well. Let's go ahead and take this full so I can show you this a little bit better. So this is the Euro, all right? GFS, right here. So the GFS is a little bit farther east than the Euro is. But what I want to show you with this is not a Francine issue. Remember yesterday I was talking about homegrown systems? So long track storms right now don't appear to be very favorable. But when you have stalled out frontal boundaries like we have all over the place, it is very common, look off the Carolinas, it is very common to see little areas develop. And there can be a little bit of quick tropical depression or tropical storm development. See that? That's next week. That's early next week. You get the stalled out front, and you every now and again see little bits of development. But if you look out in the middle Atlantic, that one area in red is going to curve harmlessly away from the U.S. and no issues whatsoever. But look at all the fronts that we're looking at over the next 10 days. I mean, look at them all. You've got all these boundaries around Florida, around the Carolinas. There's another front dropping down into the Gulf. And when you get this kind of a setup, you quite often have, here's the Euro, you quite often have homegrown development or tropical systems. Look at the Euro, right? Look at the Bahamas. Look at this area right here, okay? Look at what happens. A little development, and it turns into a little system that goes into the mid-Atlantic in about 5 or 6 days. Oh, no, this is actually a week out. But you see my point? You got, and then the stuff out in the Atlantic, that thing moves north and doesn't bother anybody. So my point is, the pattern is lending to a much higher likelihood of homegrown systems over the next 7 to 10 days, as opposed to any kind of a threat coming in from a long track hurricane. There's the rain potential. Notice where most of that is. There's your track right through central Louisiana. Even the Panhandle gets some of the rain. We might see a bit of actually moisture from it on Thursday night or Friday morning, but nothing to write home about. And again, look at the Euro. This is interesting, I think. For a brief period of time, you see these red colors right here. For a brief period of time, you're showing intensification. The red means a stronger system, but as it goes more to the north, it turns to blue again before landfall because it's going to be running into that shear. So there you have it. You got all this stuff out west, curve, or rather back east, curve, curve, curve. What you do not see is anything going into the Caribbean over the next 2 weeks. And that right there is huge. Because from this point on, anything in the Caribbean is a threat, as we know, Irma being the 7-year anniversary today of Irma, the ice storm. So we all know how quickly things can develop, especially when they come in from the south. But again, Francine, now a hurricane. I think the surge is certainly going to be an issue, but I truly believe that the wind will not be a massive factor. There will be gusty winds. There will be power outages in New Orleans. They will see 50, 55, gusts even a little bit higher. But overall, they have seen much, much worse than that. Okay? So, and again, this is the wind field from the Hurricane Center's official prediction. The red is the hurricane force winds, which you will notice as they start to go inland, really quickly starts to fade away. All right. So, anybody have any questions? I think we kind of covered it. I'll put the updated track up there. We'll get a new track out at 11 p.m. Tonight, you guys know me. I am not a political guy at all. I don't do politics. I'm not really interested in politics. I am kind of interested in watching the debate tonight. I think that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So, Anna Maria, I never heard back from Michael. So Bonnie must be busy because Michael was going to let me know. Yeah, one of our folks in Louisiana. Local weather. You know what? Good call. Good call, Renee. Local weather. Let's go over what we've got locally going on. We still have about a minute and a half for streamers. So I'll go ahead and take it full. You don't need to see me. We'll finish up the local forecast for you. Okay. We still got some rain going on in southern Polk County. Had a brief severe thunderstorm warning for Kissimmee this afternoon, but there's some heavier rain from Arcadia back to Sarasota. And it's all moving mostly from the northeast to the southwest. See it? Actually, almost due north to south. All right, so let's go ahead and look at Futurecast real quick. I'll go ahead and call that up for you. Here's the satellite. Got rain coming in from the Gulf, kind of fizzling as it gets closer. Here's Futurecast. So you got everything out of here by about 10 or 11 o'clock. Tomorrow, cloudy, more clouds and sun to start the day. Inland showers and storms pushing back toward the coast in the afternoon. Thursday, mostly dry in a lot of spots, but then some of that moisture from Francine, believe it or not, may actually come in Thursday night into Friday. And there is a look at the rainfall drying out somewhat by the weekend. Streamers, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow on our next edition. Because streamers are gone, because we will be obviously talking to, I want to know why that Zoom did not work, because I'd love to talk to Jason tomorrow as that storm's coming through. We'll figure it out. Definitely should have. But tomorrow, obviously, we have DPL Plus. Nadine is going to be here to talk more about flood insurance and things that she's been finding out, which is obviously a perfect tie-in considering we will be having a hurricane making landfall almost at that exact same spot. But if you look at the rainfall potential, we've got some slightly drier air coming in Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Now, I'm not talking cool front, low humidity, but the amount of rain coverage is going to be a little bit lower into the weekend and into early next week. Okay. Robbie, you will be fine. You're just going to get a little bit of rain out of that, and that's probably about it. Okay. Let's see. Oh, you did see that, Jules. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about that video. A lot of discussion. Julie's in Metairie. Hopefully, all is good for you, Julie. And let me see. Am I missing anything else? Yeah. Okay. Someone said, "Why are they saying it's going to dissipate?" That's an interesting question. And let me. You know what? That's a good question, and I'm going to show you where you got that from, okay? And this is why the internet, and this is why people who pretend to be armchair meteorologists on the internet can spread some pretty pathetic information out there. And there are those out there that do that. So here's what she was saying. Look at 120 hours, dissipated. So that is the case. Now, when we say dissipate, that doesn't mean poof, it's completely gone. This is from the Hurricane Center's 5 o'clock advisory, and this gives all the wind up to 90 miles an hour at its peak, down from what was supposed to be Cat 2. 90 is Cat 1, so that's good. Once it goes inland, the winds go from 65 to 35 to 30, and then it becomes a remnant low. And then in 120 hours, it dissipates. So you may have seen that somewhere where they're just talking about it dissipating. That just means in 5 days, it's going to dissipate. That's all it means. All right? Renee, I don't like having NFL games on Friday if they're on Peacock because I don't have Peacock. So I can't watch them. And that ticked me off because I wanted to watch the Packers play the Eagles on Friday, and I could not watch it because it's on a cable channel that I don't get. So I don't like it. I mean, you know, if they want to play on something where I have more access to, then I'm all for it. But you got all the different streaming channels, and now the games are all over the place, and you never know whether are they going to be on Prime, are they going to be on Paramount, are they going to be on Peacock, are they going to be on NBC, CBS, Fox, ABC, ESPN, all of the above. It's a bunch of nonsense. But Daniel has Peacock, so there you go. And I don't disagree, Renee. I think Friday should be high school football, too. That's kind of a tradition. Friday Night Lights, right? You know, the NFL has taken over. And what the heck was up with CMC? That was some interesting discussions, right? So Jordan Mason, you know, the running back, the backup for Christian McCaffrey. I don't know if you heard this, but I feel bad for the kid because they interviewed him after. This kid was a non-drafted player. And he's starting on Monday night because Christian McCaffrey's hurt, right? And he has a great game, and they interview him afterwards, and the ABC reporter says, so when did you find out that you were going to play? He's like, oh, I found out on Friday. Well, they didn't announce that McCaffrey was going to not play until an hour and a half before the game. So there's a lot of people saying, well, wait a minute. If this guy knew that he was going to start on Friday, how come they didn't say anything Saturday, Sunday, into early Monday? And then apparently the press conference after, this was like live on TV, and then they did the press conference after, and they kind of asked him the same question, and he got all flustered because the coach read him the riot act after he did that interview on ABC and said that he was told on Friday that he was going to start. Because that's one of those things that they don't like anybody else to know because they don't want to give the other team an advantage. They know that McCaffrey wasn't going to play. I felt bad for the kid. You know, if you're going to put him on national TV and let him get out there, you got to tell him in advance, hey, dude, just, you know, if they ask when you found out, just say, I'm always ready. I'm always prepared. Doesn't matter. You don't answer the question, right? I did. I felt bad for it. Anyway, all right. So let's see. What else do we got? The Tyreek Hill body cam video. Now, and I will tell you, if you noticed last night, the Dolphins came out and blasted the police department. That was a little surprising to me. I mean, whether or not whatever side you're on, whichever you agree with, that's your own personal opinion. But I was surprised that such a large entity like the Dolphins came out and pretty much called for them to fire the police that detained Tyreek Hill. If you haven't seen the video, you should see it. I mean, go on Twitter or all you got to do is Google Tyreek Hill body cam video. It's out there. And it was released, the police released it. It's pretty interesting. I mean, they manhandled that guy. Now, whether you think he was justified or not, that's you. And, everybody's different. It doesn't matter to me. But what I found interesting is that the Dolphins came out and made a statement pretty much saying these guys should be fired. These police should be fired. I found that very, very, very interesting. So, anyway, I guess that is about it, guys. Again, I will be back tomorrow with Nadine, and we'll be seeing if we can have, maybe Bonnie can come tomorrow when the storm's coming. That would even be more interesting. I have to reach out to Michael and see what happened. But that's where we are. Again, Hurricane Francine, 75-mile-an-hour winds, landfall, east of Lafayette, closer to Baton Rouge, winds diminishing somewhat as it makes landfall, but still a Cat 1 hurricane with gusts of about 85 to 90 miles an hour. Look, there's going to be a lot of power outages. There'll be some damage. I mean, a Cat 1 hurricane typically will not give structural damage, but there'll be some trees down, and there'll be power outages, and there'll be some visuals. And if you're in that area, just at this point in time, expect you might not have power for a couple of days. I mean, I think that's probably a pretty good representation. But if you're in New Orleans and you have your kids in New Orleans at Tulane, or, you have family or friends there, look, the west side of town is going to get some wind, 50, 55, maybe 60. There's going to be some water with some storm surge. And the French Quarter will get flooded because it always does. And you'll see some video of that sort of thing. But overall, this is a threat that is nowhere near a lot of other threats that they have seen over the last several years. So hopefully it plays out that way. I can't imagine it's going to get much stronger than that forecast, only because it just won't have a lot of time. And even if it does pop a little bit overnight, once it starts running into that shear, it might not weaken a lot. I don't think it'll have time to really weaken much, but it's not going to get any stronger. That's kind of the way I see it. So, all right, guys. Well, is fall coming? Yeah, Renee, I mean, it's only early to mid-September. Okay, Nancy asked about the long-range stuff. I will show you one more map. Because this comes out on Tuesday, and you guys are kind of familiar with this one. If I can find it. Here. All right. So this is the extended forecast map. You guys know the map, the one that says experimental. And I think this is worth noting a couple of things. First of all, remember I talked about homegrown? Look at what they're predicting off the Mid-Atlantic next week. A homegrown system. Because the Euro and the GFS both show it. You've got another area that it tries to develop, but remember, the red hatched like this is a 20 to 40% chance. All right? It is not even a 50-50 chance. Look at the following week. Another potential homegrown system in the Gulf. It's almost like we know what we're talking about on this stuff. You get a stalled out front. You get a lot of stalled out fronts coming up over the next 7 to 10 days. And anytime you get a stalled out front, you can see little waves of low pressure develop along that front. Happens all the time. And then it's still another one off of Africa, another wave coming in. And, that one looks very similar in terms of positioning. Obviously, the one thing we hope to avoid is anything far enough south that gets into the Caribbean. Because I will tell you, and I'll go on the record with this right now, if we get a storm, an intensifying hurricane in the Caribbean once we hit mid to late September, that is not good news for Florida. Because those are the scenarios that we want to avoid at all costs. The ones that come in from the east, the ones that come in from the west, they might have an impact on us, even through the Florida Straits, Irma, Ian, obviously, but that still has to make a really hard turn. And for our area to be hit directly by that, it's a challenge. But when those storms come in from the Caribbean, start to pull northward and split the Yucatan and Cuba, those are the ones that I worry about the most, without any hesitation. So what we hope is that we do not see any of these storms going into the Caribbean. And as I said, if you look at the Euro, for the next 2 weeks, it's got nothing developing in the Caribbean. Nothing. It's all north. And if it's north in September, 9 times out of 10, it's going to curve. But look at this. This is that homegrown area I was talking about. I'll take this full. Look at this little development. This is no track, right? There's no track here. This is homegrown because you'd have a stalled out front right there. And then you get this little wave of low pressure develop, and usually it'll just kind of go right there or right there. That's what they normally do. And then, of course, you have Francine. But this will curve. This will curve. We hope we don't see anything in there. And this hurricane season, my friends, is going to last into November. I mean, yes, technically it's going to last into November always because hurricane season runs to the end of November. But I think a lot of us are like, by the time we're in Halloween, I start putting up my Christmas decorations and we're not thinking about the tropics. I think we're going to be thinking about the tropics into November this year. I think I really do, especially because La Nina is going to start kicking in even more so October and November. And the Caribbean is still super warm, as is the Gulf. So right now we're looking good. Francine is the one thing that obviously folks in Louisiana take seriously. Make sure you have everything that you need to stay safe and to expect power outages for a day or two. New Orleans on the fringe. I think you'll be just fine. There's going to be water in the French Quarter. There's going to be some flooding. There's going to be some surge. Make sure you're aware and prepared for that. But the wind, I don't think is going to be as nearly the issue that the water is going to be. All right? All right, guys. Have a great night. And tomorrow night, I will be back with Nadine for Dennis Phillips Live Plus as Francine moves on shore. And hopefully we'll be having some interviews from people who are out in it as well. You guys have a good night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.